Is that MisaMisa VR?
What's up, Juggalos? We're here at Blockbuster. I'm amazed I did not grab my camera like always. We're here at Blockbuster to talk about Blockbuster. And it's Netflix's take on kind of an attempt to recreate The Office. You know, everybody loves The Office, Michael Scott and Dwight and all of them. And the cheating fat whore Pam. And the soy boy who's the cheaty. And the guy who's actually pretty alright, Roy, who gets fucked over by a cheating fat pig that he was going to marry. And that stupid romance people obsessed over because normies love cheating and whores and sluts because it justifies who they are to themselves. But anyway, very good comedy until the last few seasons. What's Michael Scott left? I was going to say the actress name and then I forgot it. Once he left, it went downhill. It was still pretty okay for a while, but not great, not good. Most of the episodes were hit or miss, like really bad. Either they were alright or they were just shit. Anyway, the first, like 11 seasons of The Office were really fun. This is lagging really bad. Holy shit. I wonder how the video is. Well, anyway. It's, you know, this is Netflix's trying to answer that call for more of The Office that people want. And it follows in the footsteps of its namesake. You see, if you're a Zoomie and you don't know much about Blockbuster, it was a video rental store, you know, VHS, and still in the DVDs and PlayStation games and stuff like that, but mostly back in the VHS era and a little bit into the DVD era, really. I'm sure there was still, I mean, there is technically still that one, I think, which, that's what the show is, and we'll get to it because it doesn't make sense. The show takes place at the last Blockbuster, though in this case it's Michigan for some reason, and in real life it's Oregon or Idaho or something where it is.
Or maybe he's just bummed because he's a grown man with roommates. Duh, he's obviously just freaking out because we're the last Blockbuster.
What? Look. What are we gonna do?
Why change that? I don't fucking know. Too many white people, maybe, so it upset them. But it's much like Blockbuster the company. The show completely misunderstands what made it successful and what's making its rivals successful. In the case of The Office, there weren't any rivals really, and there still isn't really. Nobody really tries to make the. I'm sure there are like the Parks and Rec and stuff. I never bothered touching it, and like the Community or whatever the fuck it was called. I don't know. The one with the black guy. That's how I identify shows. The one I didn't watch because there's an obnoxious black guy in it. That's not to say I don't watch shows with black people in them. But that show had one of the main characters was an obnoxious black actor that I can't stand being an obnoxious character in the show. And so that's how I remember the show. It's not racism. No. It's just that's how I remember the show. That obnoxious guy who happens to look a certain way. That's not why he's obnoxious, though. Anyway. Blockbuster failed as a company because it couldn't compete with streaming and this and that. It didn't even try. That's the thing. Did not even attempt to. The thing is, though, millennials and even Zoomers will pretend, oh, back in the old days, oh, I have all those memories. It's like they psyop themselves into believing false memories. All these people, even like, there's threads and threads about it. About like, oh, remember the old days when you go to Blockbuster with your family and you pick a snack and rent a movie or two? Nobody does. Nobody went to Blockbuster. The rich kids went to Blockbuster. Now, I'm not saying nobody had money, but most middle-class people back then, which were actually middle class, unlike now, why is this running so bad? I can't. You want to know why it's crashing? There's the answers. 20 fucking video players, all force playing a video you cannot stop. Not to, not to mention the world just isn't optimized, but holy shit. Who's stupid enough to put a bunch of fucking video players in the world that you can't end this animated popcorn and shit in a world? Where's the fucking door? Now we're in a 7-Eleven for some reason because, I mean, I don't know. Also, guess what? Guess fucking what? More auto-playing videos you can't turn off. And then they wonder why nobody visits their shitty fucking worlds. I'm not even on a quest. Quest players can't even join these worlds. Which, I mean, good. I fucking can't stand the quest. Anyway. This is where I looked for video rental stores. There was none other than the Blockbusters. And all the Blockbusters were ass. Is this a mirror? It's not even a mirror. It's just a mirror. Okay, it is a mirror. Anyway, as I was saying, most middle-class people were, back then even, you weren't that well off. Blockbuster charged like crazy. It was basically the equivalent of either buying off the, value menu at like Burger King or Taco Bell versus going to Wendy's and ordering a combo. Wendy's, you're paying, I just went to Wendy's the other day, $13 for a combo. That's all I got. I didn't get anything extra, I didn't do anything else. $13 fucking dollars for just a normal Dave's whatever, the Dave's burger. I could go to Applebee's or Buffalo Wild Wings and get real food for $13 fucking dollars. And then yesterday, not today, I went to Burger King, $7. And I got a large ass fry, a cheeseburger with the rodeo burger, so no cheese, it's just a hamburger with barbecue sauce and onion rings on it, a chicken sandwich, and onion rings on the side, and a large Dr. Pepper. $7. Still expensive compared to how it was in the old days, yes, but it was a lot cheaper than fucking Wendy's. Point is, Blockbuster was insanely overpriced. I can't remember the prices, but it was like triple the cost of going to a normal video store. Nobody went to Blockbuster. Anybody pretending, oh, I remember the old days going to Blockbuster with my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters. We were fighting over which movie to get. They're making it up. They're making up stories. It's fiction. Nobody did that. Nobody went to Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a very rare thing. One, they never had what you wanted. Almost every video and every video game was always out of stock. They never had fucking anything. Not because people were renting them, well, because they would rent them and they never return them. Because the return cost, if you forgot by a day, was like twice the amount paid to fucking rent it in the first place. It was ridiculous. Oh, you didn't rewind it? Oh, you're going to be charged for that too. And so nobody rented shit, and so they just never stocked the stores. I was in the middle of Los Angeles, and those places were empty of people and empty of anything to rent at all times. You could go on a Friday night, you could go on a weekend, empty, empty, empty. The only thing that was ever full was the staff. They had like 20 staff members and nothing, and nobody doing anything, nobody restocking the videos, nothing. And then over time, eventually it became where they didn't even have the movies and stuff out. You had to just take a little paper slip and take it up to the front. Maybe that's because where I lived, so there was a lot of urban people who would like to steal things, and so they couldn't stock them. But either way, it was overpriced as shit. Nobody went, and their snacks were like fucking $12 for a little pack of M&Ms. Nobody's paying that. Everybody went to local video stores or Hollywood Video or any of those things. Nobody went to Blockbuster. They went out of business because they were shit and they were overpriced. Nobody has memories of Blockbuster. They have pretend-ass memories of Blockbuster. They probably went twice on like when they were on a trip or something, and they just turned that into this big narrative about how nostalgic they are for a thing that never fucking happened. And anyway, even if you went to Blockbuster, you couldn't get anything anyway because it's out of stock. Oh, whoops, we don't have that. Oh, whoops, we don't have that. Oh, whoops, we don't have that. Oh, take the paper slip up. Oh, whoops, we don't have that. Take the box up. Oh, whoops, it's empty because somebody stole it. So eventually, then, and this is ironic with this show. It's pissing me off about this show. Netflix started, right? And Netflix was a DVD rental service originally. They still were until this year, actually. I think they finally stopped this year, 2023. But they would mail you DVDs, and it was a long time until they would, like, I think late fees were like a 7-day thing. Blockbuster, you got it like 2 days, and they'd late for you like a day after for like $8 or something, which back then was more like $15. So it's like Netflix was sending shit to your home. You didn't have to go out. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to do that. You just got it, and then when you wanted to send it back, you slip it in the mailbox. And your late fees, I forget if they existed at all. And if they did, it was like a week or two or something. You got to keep your shit. And they were also doing video games like that. Of course, GameFly also started. I actually love GameFly. I don't have it right now just because of money, but it's actually a really good service. I'm glad it's still around. I hope eventually I can get back on it. But Blockbuster failed because they couldn't bother. They kept the prices insanely high. They didn't compete with local businesses who were competing with them. They just said, well, our name is known, so we're going to survive and you're not. And then every Blockbuster started going out of business, while every local rental store was still doing fine. Eventually those went out of business too because of streaming. That's also the thing where Blockbuster failed. They never set up a streaming service, as far as I know, or as anybody else knows. They never had streaming. They never had mail. And so they died out. A useless, defunct company that refused to keep up with the times, refused to understand what made them successful, and more importantly, what made Netflix as a competitor successful. Here's the irony. The show mentions Blockbuster dying because of streaming, and they only specify Amazon, which didn't even start streaming video until way after Blockbuster was a completely bankrupt company.
Supplies, and yes, even renting a movie. Used to be our chance to interact with a familiar face. But big corporations like Amazon stole that. It's why people are so pissed off nowadays.
Netflix killed Blockbuster, which is the irony of Blockbuster being a show by Netflix where they bitch about streaming and never, ever, ever mention Netflix except for positively in other episodes. It's Amazon that killed Blockbuster, even though at the time Blockbuster died, Amazon was still pretty much just books. It was pretty much just an online bookstore still at that point. So you can see the history being rewritten just right there. Even Amazon did this to Blockbuster, to your nostalgia. Amazon killed it, not Netflix. See, we made a show about it. We're on your side. We love Blockbuster. We didn't kill it. Wait, our entire business was specifically aimed at killing Blockbuster, and we succeeded. And it's the same thing, to finally get around to what I was trying to say, it's the same thing that Blockbuster, the show, is doing towards The Office. It's completely missing what made it successful. It wasn't a competitor, obviously. It was years ago that The Office ended. But it has a complete misunderstanding of what it's trying to replicate. Just like Blockbuster did when they were trying to copy anything going on at the time. They never even did, really. They never even tried. But they did start like advertisements with like really cringe slogans and really lame bullshit about like the call-gorithm, where you could call and they would recommend videos for you instead of the algorithm. Ooh, we're so much better because a human will tell you. Yeah, you know what? I would rather talk to a human when I'm looking for customer support, not when I'm looking for a movie to pick, and not when I have to go to the store and find it's not in stock, and then be told, oh, okay, you finally found it. Well, you know, you don't bring it in tomorrow. You don't watch it today and bring it in tomorrow. Then you're going to pay us $20. You know. And what this missed about The Office was pretty much everything. This doesn't replicate it's like an AI wrote it and acted it and everything and scripted it and even designed the sets. It's trying hard to replicate The Office, and yet it's not at all replicating The Office. Not even in a bad way. It's just taking weird elements. It's like if you've messed with Stable Diffusion at all, which I do now. Maybe I'll make some videos about that because I have it all set up and it's fun. When you tell the computer, you give it keywords, right? You give a prompt. Girl, you have an anime model set up, so it'll look like anime art. Portrait of a girl standing in a forest, in a white blouse, under a leaf, with rain when it's raining, and then other keywords like picnic basket, picnic blanket, stool, lantern, frogs, mushrooms, leaves. And the computer, sometimes it'll understand what you're saying, especially if you write that whole sentence I did at the beginning. But it just takes those words and tries to figure out it has no context. And that's exactly what the show feels like. There's no context. There isn't the portrait of a girl, blah, blah, blah. There's just what I used to do, which doesn't really work well. It's like the show just has the keywords only. Girl, rain, forest, blouse, etc. Stuff like that. And it has no understanding of what you're actually asking it to do. It just knows elements of what you want. It doesn't know how you want them. So sometimes you'll end up with a blouse with eyeballs and trees for legs because it doesn't know what it's doing. It just knows you want these elements. It doesn't know how to compose them because you didn't tell it. And that's what Blockbuster, the show, feels like. It feels like a bunch of these elements from The Office with no context given to the editors, the actors, the writers, where it just is this conglomeration, this weird mass of random bullshit stuff that doesn't make sense because it's just there. It's the girl with the eyeballs on her blouse and the trees for legs and the mushrooms for ears. Like, one of the biggest things right away, easiest to notice, is that they try to replicate the romance of Pam and Jim, because that's what a lot of normie women and stuff were into, and soy boys and shit. I mean, Jim definitely helped the soy boy movement because he made them feel like, oh, what, I can get a girlfriend? No, you're still an incel, you're a fucking loser. Soy! And this tries to replicate that right away with the main character and one of his employees. So basically Michael Scott, if he was genuinely like in love with Pam, which, you know, before we get to even that part, the characters, they try to replicate the whole cast. Not one-to-one, except for a few. Michael Scott, yes, they try to replicate him one-to-one. And overly, well, other than the part that made him fun, which was the offensive stuff that they even, some of it censored out now on current streaming platforms and releases, especially one episode, because they mention a certain tribe of people as a joke. Dwight does. He asks for a loan from somebody who has something written on a card on their head. It might be on some, but I remembered there was a big deal because they just took that whole episode down because it was too offensive. None of the other episodes were too offensive, apparently, when they make fun of black people and white people and, you know, disabled people. Only that one. Anyway, the appeal of Michael Scott and why people love The Office is he's a retard. He's a funny, retarded, accidental jackass, but in a loving, caring, fun way. He genuinely believes he's a good guy, and he's good. He's just a dumbass. And they tried to replicate the non-offensive element of him. This guy in Blockbuster is this really homosexual seeming Asian guy who, I'm not trying to be racist with this, but I'm pretty sure he's the Asian guy in everything lately. He looks the same from what I recall. I think he might be the guy from that Spider-Man game. There was an Asian bad guy, which might have been a movie too with the Asian bad guy. I think he's the new Sam Beckett. I think, maybe. I don't know. But he seems really... And they went with him being really naive and out of touch with current electronics and tech, but trying to be hip and cool. They took that element and brought it over, and also him being in love with somebody, they brought it over, and him being overly nice and trying overly hard for his staff, they brought over.
I miss the places. I miss the people. Humans need to interact with each other. Mindy used to make me laugh every morning. DJ Steve gave the best advice.
So long as you steered clear of his opinions on pronouns.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned.
But they lost the entirety of what made him endearing. Because now he's just a generic, I'm so good and happy and nice to everybody, and I'm just trying so hard to be nice to everybody, and I get fucked over because I'm trying so hard to be nice to everybody. There's no extra to that. That's it. That's his entire character. He's an overly nice, semi-homosexual. That's it. And every episode is pretty much about him being that way. Being overly nice and something bad happening from it. And then trying to not be overly nice and do his job, like, oh, he has to fire somebody, and then not having to fire, which again is stripped straight from early The Office episodes where Michael Scott had to fire somebody, and of course he tries to fire Creed, and then Creed talks him out of it, and Creed stays. But in this, it's just he's gonna fire the mulatto teenage weird La Americana creatura, and instead her black dad, who owns the strip mall that Blockbuster is in, says no, you can't fire her, and so he doesn't fire her. Okay, what did we learn from that? What did the characters? What happened? Was there comedy? Nothing happens. And then there's the girl he loves, who's the generic Pam. Then there's some old Mexican lady who constantly, as Mexicans do, obsessively for no reason starts saying words in Spanish like a dick. So she was obnoxious. They almost fired her. I wish she had been fired. Then there's some clueless, vapid, because they had to make fun of white people, of course. So there's this blonde white girl who's just completely retarded. Like, literally, that's the joke, is she's retarded. But, like, none of these characters have any depth. They're one-note characters. And yes, Jim is a one-note character. Pam is a one-note character. Michael's kind of multifaceted in his one note, but he's still a one-note character. Dwight's a one-note character. But they all have depth to that note. You know, one-note character can still be full of something entertaining or fun or enjoyable or interesting. These guys are just a blank slate other than their one singular element of, this is who I am. There's nothing beyond it. And none of them earn you caring either. It's another big misstep here. In The Office, you care about... I don't really... But people care about Jim and Pam's relationship because it builds up over time. At the beginning, it's this flirty, but she's taken... And she's a cheating fat pig woman who obsesses over the actor of Jim in real life. If you ever seen her Twitter, like, she's creepy about it. She's a stalker, practically. And I'm not trying to demean her or anything, or let's say any other legal terms her. I'm just saying, in my opinion, the way she comes off is a little stalkery and creepy. And in real life, he's married to someone else. But I mean, she's even said in interviews, "I fell in love with his real name, whatever it is." And I'm sure he fell in love with Pam too, with me. And he's like, "No, no, I don't know what she's talking about." But moving on. But that relationship starts in the beginning, but doesn't go anywhere for a long time. And then there's a step here and there. You know, they kiss at one point because she's a cheating fat pig, and then they move on, and then more happens and more happens, and they don't even get together for ages because the story doesn't let them, because they need to develop that. They need to develop those feelings for the viewer. This show, you're supposed to be really, really invested in this romance between the Asian guy and the girl who works for him, that he's in love with. You're supposed to care so much about it, and they treat it like you already know these characters, already care about these characters, already care about the romance, and you can't and you don't, because you don't know who the fuck these people are. And it doesn't work because of that. There's nothing there for the viewer. Another weird thing about the show is, and maybe I'm wrong about how they looked in the end, but the Blockbuster somewhat looked like a Blockbuster, but a lot of the internal design didn't really look like one I'd ever seen. And I used to, again, we never went to Blockbusters too often, but I've been to multiple. Acid reflux. And it looks like, again, like The Office. It looks kind of like it's vaguely, like you told the computer elements of Blockbuster and they threw it together, and it looks close. It looks pretty close, but not. Like there's even, it's weirdly shaped for a Blockbuster. It's got a weird back room with windows for the main op manager's office that open up to the Blockbuster rental area. It's weird. That doesn't exist. That's never. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they've been designed different, but I've been to like 7 of them when I was younger, including maybe in a couple other states, but mostly in California, and they were all not that. Which is a weird detail to get wrong when your show is called Blockbuster and it takes place in a Blockbuster. But what other connections? What would you expect from a show called Blockbuster other than trying to replicate The Office and failing? Movie references, maybe some references to like how Blockbuster failed, like streaming and the internet and video games perhaps, but mostly movie references. You know, you're expecting the characters to toss out. It's a show, so you're going to assume the characters like movies and they reference movies. Do they? Yes, but they reference things in the most Reddity, cringe, annoying way, and none of them make sense. Like, they just throw these titles of movies out apropos of nothing at all. There's not like, it's not like a reference like if they were opening the store and somebody says, Joffrey, raise the gates, you know, referencing Jurassic Park's intro. Something like that. Something stupid, but still a reference. These aren't references in the show. They never reference a show. Or a movie, rather. Or either, actually. They just mention the title of them randomly. So they'll be like, I remember at one point, the joke, this is the whole joke, there's no other context. They're just talking about something else entirely, and then a character starts laughing and everybody looks over. And it's like a fat girl or something. She goes, "Oh, sorry, I was just thinking of James Corden." That's the joke. She said James Corden, and that's a name apparently people know. I don't know who that is. Is it an actor? Is it? I don't know. But that's the joke, is somebody said the name James Corden. That's the joke. That's it. That's the joke. That's the kind of humor you get in Blockbuster. Another one, somebody said something jokingly mean to somebody, and they said in response, "Oh, you're gonna feel real bad when you find my body under 100 copies of Wedding Crashers." Excuse me? What's the joke? That you like a bad movie and you have 100 copies of it? Okay. They weren't talking about relationships, they weren't talking about romance, they weren't talking about wedding crashing, they weren't talking about anybody in that movie or anything about that movie or the themes of that movie. She just was saying, "Oh, I'm depressed because I'm a millennial or Zoomer." And so she randomly throws the title out there because it's a movie title. That's the writing in this. That's the quality of writing Netflix could manage to think up for this.
Look, you may be slower on a computer than the DMV sloth in Zootopia, but you're all I've got. I just can't watch Trout Royale with him because he prefers the terrible English dub to...
Then there's an entire, like 20-minute, maybe not 20 minutes, this is a shorter show, it felt like 20 minutes, it was probably like 3-minute long, diatribe of fucking comedy about which is your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. At least compared to the rest, it's a little more understandable, but then there is no actual discussion. They're not actually making jokes, they're not actually saying anything, they're not actually developing a character. They're just saying, "Hey, Ninja Turtles, I like Donatello." That's it. That's what you get from this show. It's just a billion random movie titles and TV show titles or actor names or character names and a bunch of non sequiturs that go nowhere and just spawn from nowhere. And I don't know. And then there's one of the only the only white male in this. Actually, I think he's Mexican. Is as a homosexual, of course.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, you do have a David Arquette and Scream sort of appeal.
So there's the Asian guy who in one episode, this is why I think he's Sam Beckett. It's not just that he looks like the guy from the very little I've seen of the commercials for that. He also in one episode has the old Emmett Selk, the white patch of hair right there. And Sam Beckett in Quantum Leap also had that. And then in one episode of Blockbuster, this guy has that, so I'm pretty sure that's him. But there's no other reason, there's no other explanation for why he'd have that. And then there's some... Oh, the guy the Asian likes is a roasty coal burner. She completely just... Her ex-boyfriend, who she's still fucking, is a black guy, because of course. Because she's whitish. Then the retarded white girl... Then the old Mexican bitch who's annoying as shit. And then, yeah, there's this quote-unquote teen mulatto who's bitchy and obnoxious to look at. And it doesn't make sense either in little ways, this show. Even her uniform, she's the only one, she just wears a crop top. But it's like the official clothes at the same time. And it's allowed by the manager for no reason other than, well, I guess it is the best friends. Which that's another thing. The black best friend who runs the strip mall, who is best friends with the Asian guy who runs the Blockbuster, is a complete piece of shit the whole show.
An eviction notice? What gives, man?
In my defense, I wasn't supposed to be with you when you found that.
He is never redeemed. He's never good. He's never a nice guy. He's constantly being a shithead to the store and the manager, who is his best friend. He's just a piece of shit, which fits, but they never make it out like he's supposed to actually seem that way, even though he's constantly being a dick and being an asshole and even trying to close the Blockbuster down and ruin his best friend's life for nothing. He even threatens him with oh, I'm going to raise the rent for your business like triple if you don't keep my daughter on your staff, which is, first off, completely illegal, and secondly, that's your best friend. And he just keeps doing things like that the entire show, and they never ever acknowledge it. They just move on from it like it never happened, because he's black, so you can't say he's a bad guy while making him a bad guy. Also, yeah, the set really sucks. The set design on the outside, especially the strip mall, is like, it's clearly the back lot of a filming place, because it's just massive concrete slab buildings, which next to a giant concrete slab warehouse building. There is no strip mall like that. Strip malls are on the edge of streets. That's why they're a strip mall. You can see all the stores, and you pull in, and there's not a strip mall surrounded by warehouse buildings that's also built in three-story tall concrete. Another weird thing. They say it's 20. What did they say? They say it's the last Blockbuster, which happened a while ago. But then they start mentioning. So this is ignore that. The most important thing about the timeline issue here is they talk about stuff that didn't exist until at earliest 2021. They talk about Wordle. They reference Wordle, which didn't get created until 2021. They talk about shit. Where's my notes? In a world of 5G. They talk about being in this world of 5G, you can do anything on your phone. 5G wasn't even a thing until a couple years ago. But then, and this is amazing with Netflix, given they shove it into everything 1,000 times as much as possible, even Resident Evil, they never once mention COVID, because they don't want you to remember COVID, because they're part of that. Nobody wants you to remember COVID. It's being memory holed. It never existed in the first place, but now they're memory holding it so they can claim they never did anything to you over it. Never forced you to get vaccines, never forced you to wear a mask, never forced you not to go outside, never made it illegal to leave your home. Oh wait, they did in most states, or at least any state with a big city, or at least in any big city. Oh, and in all of Australia, and all of New Zealand. Oh, and most of Europe. Oh, and Canada. But no, they didn't. I could not go to fucking Taco Bell or the grocery store or to get my hair cut during COVID when I lived in Los Angeles. It literally was illegal. You would get arrested. They had cops patrolling and you'd get arrested, and they'd pull you over and you'd have to prove to them with paperwork. And the only time I was able to get out was because... So it happened. Sorry, Netflix. Sorry, CNN. Sorry, Israel. But it happened, and we know it happened, and you can't erase it. Anyway, they mention stuff that didn't exist. And yet they don't mention one of the most important things, especially... Now, that's another thing tied to this. This is the last Blockbuster, right? Well, if this is taking place after COVID, then that would mean Blockbuster went out of business because of COVID, making people not be able to go to the store, or not wanting to go to the store because they don't want to be around people, which would mean it's a relevant factor to bring up. So the one time Netflix gets a chance in their fictional version of what happened to Blockbuster to mention coronavirus in a way that actually makes sense in a show or a movie that they make, they don't. They don't bother. Another problem with the show, and you might agree if you've seen any other recent sitcoms, it's just like those in terms of everything is super oversaturated and blindingly bright. Like, the blues are unbelievably blue. The everything is just washed over with bright and super vibrant colors that aren't realistic and make no sense and look really bad on video or stream, whatever, on when recorded, and they just look bad because it's not when recorded, it's that they go in after when they're editing and just boom. And I'll do if I can figure out how to do it on Vegas, I'll do it for this video, for this part right now, just now. The colors are unbelievably extreme. They just put saturation to maximum, and then they took that image with saturation to maximum and put it to maximum again. It's that blown. It's that ugly and blown out, and the colors are that stupid. Now sometimes there's a few scenes for some reason that look fine, but not most. There's also the issue with flat lighting, which makes that super blown out color look even worse, and everything else look worse. Everything is just superly, completely flat lights. There's no shadows really. There's no depth to the scenes, which, ironically, anytime you look behind anybody, the depth of field is unbelievable. They could be standing right here next to some DVDs, and this shit will be just like it's just unbelievably blurry because the depth of field shit is so high. It's insane. So cinematography wise, ass. Directing wise, ass. Writing wise, ass. The actors all blow ass. So writing wise, acting wise, ass. Another weird thing. I don't know why it's there, but almost every episode, or at least nearly every episode, they have a TV on in the background, or for like a moment, the camera's on, then moves away, talking about the end of the world's coming, a meteor, I think it was. Basically, Final Fantasy VII's happening. Oh no, that's later on they finally mention that, and that's the excuse for the end of the show. Oh, the world's ending. Yeah, Final Fantasy XIV it up. Just end it, and if we get a season 2, just pretend it never happened. Make it part of the story. But no, every episode, the news guy's like, oh, I'm filling in for whoever is they're on vacation, over and over again. Every episode this joke is there, this recurring attempt at humor. I don't know what's supposed to be funny about that. I grew up watching the news. Clearly it did not get to my brain, but I'd remember if every time I turned the news on, it was, oh hello, I'm Steve filling in for Margaret because she's on vacation, and then the next day, oh, I'm Jane filling in for Steve because he's on vacation. Oh, I'm Marcus filling in for whatever I just had said because she's on vacation. That's what they do in the show. I don't get what the joke is supposed to be there. It's like a very personal in-joke with one of the writers probably, who was like, oh, my mom will get this joke, I'm gonna put it in the show. Nobody else is. Nobody else other than people maybe in your town, your tiny little fucking nowhere town. But I'd never seen that, even living where I do now, which is a tiny town. I've never heard of that or seen that. So I don't know what it's supposed to be joking or referencing. But, I mean, yeah, that's basically, there's not much else to say. I mostly ranted about other things, because there's not really much to say about the show. It just kind of is. It's bad. There's nothing in it worth mentioning. The characters are all... No, they're not just unlikable. They are unlikable. But they're also empty. They're just vessels with nothing filling them. They serve no purpose to any story. They don't have any comedy to them. They just reference... Not reference. I keep saying reference, and it's wrong. They just say movie titles randomly in a sentence as if it's a joke. They have no bonds of friendship that build over time. They have no development over time. The romance stuff never goes anywhere, and you don't care if it does because you don't know these people anyway. And the blockbuster element is essentially irrelevant. They basically just ignore the fact it takes place in a blockbuster. All they had to do was make you... There's one episode where there's two guys who are there looking for video games, and there's a little area which I've never seen in my life to try video games out. In a blockbuster, I've never seen that, but it's there in this. And they're playing it. And they're talking to like the staff, because apparently they come normally, even though they were in no other episodes. And like they act like that's where that was the one time the show got close to having a show, where there's, you know, the customers talking about movies and video games to the staff, and there's a little bit of comedy there, and these interactions, these social interactions. Instead, it's this weird focus on characters you don't know, don't care about, and yet it thrusts you in like you've known them for 12 seasons already. It's a bad show. It's a typical... I would rather have rewatched Resident Evil TV show, the Netflix Resident Evil show, than have watched this, is basically what I'm getting at. And this is a lot shorter and a lot less obnoxious about not being Resident Evil. But that was at least a show trying to do something. It was poor at it. It was a bad show. It was a really bad Resident Evil show. And it's cringe and it's shitty, but it was trying something and it was actually attempting to try it. Blockbuster is quote-unquote trying something, and yet it does nothing to actually show you it's attempting to do this thing. It never does anything to earn anything. It never does anything to develop anything. It never does anything at all. It never does anything with the setting. It may as well have taken place in a 7-Eleven. In fact, it would have been a better setting for it, because then you can ignore the fact that it's supposed to be there. It's just, oh, okay, this is a show about minimum wage employees at a shitty job they don't care about. Okay. Call it 9/11. That wouldn't work very well, would it? Call it anything. Call it 9 to 5 and have it be a sitcom about normal employees working at a nondescript video store. You'd already have succeeded making something better then. So, it's not good. It's not good. It's bad. It's Netflix shit. It's one of those ones where you go, oh, okay, this is why Netflix canceled it, because it's fucking garbage. Though I would say that applies to literally everything they've ever made. I don't understand people getting mad about Netflix canceling anything, because Netflix has never produced anything worth seeing. And Blockbuster is yet another piece of evidence for that. There's zero value here. There's zero to bother with. There's no reason for you to even spend an episode on it. Like, the acting is stilted, the writing is nonsensical Reddit shit. I said Superman. I said The Princess Bride. I said Star Wars Episode 7. So, I don't know. I don't know what you want from me. I know what I want from you, though. I want you to fuck off.
My daughter called me dad without throwing the word cuck in there. No cuck! No cuck!